welcome to the Everyone's a Critic movie review podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zarrell.
Hey, I met you. You are not cool.
With me, as always, is professional film critic Sean Patrick.
I am the smart. I am the smart. S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-R-T.
And Josh Adams.
Stick around.
Visit us at IHateCritics.net. We're also on Facebook at Everyone's a Critic podcast. We have a Facebook group, I Hate Critics, as well. Twitter and Instagram handles are Critics Pod, I believe. I always forget that one. There you can check out our top fives, read Sean's reviews, watch the trailers we talk about, any news or discussion that goes on as well. iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, that's the best place to listen to the show, or wherever you're listening to it. But if you could go to Apple Podcasts or iTunes and subscribe to the show and rate and review the show, we will read your review on the air. And then IHateCritics.net/Patreon to get a credit on the show and get a shout out at the end of the episode and bonus episodes and selected merch, which maybe next week we can record the bonus episode depending on how we're feeling, depending on whether there's gymnastics or not.
Not for us, mind you. But
yeah, the three of us go on meets together and compete. Wait till we go to video.
When was the last time I did any gymnastics? 1988? 87?
Fine gymnastics.
Yeah. That's a salient point, sir.
Oh, wait, no.
Yeah. Yesterday, actually. Not really. It was 2 years ago. Anyway. Lost my train of thought. On our website, IHateCritics.net, I started posting my list of the ranking in order of what I've seen this year. I know Sean's doing it elsewhere, and I need to find a way. Is it in one particular spot, or does it change all the time?
What's that?
Your list of everything from 2018 that you've seen? Do you just keep updating the same link, or do you just do
it's a new link every week. Yeah, I write a new full-length column about everything I've seen, and why I'm ranking things the way I'm ranking them.
And I don't know why I'm asking this on the show instead of off the air, but is there a way, like if we link to your other site, can you link directly to you, or does it just go to Okay, yeah. We'll have to set that up on the website as well. So you can go straight to Sean's reviews from our site.
Geeks.media, horror.media, sometimes serve.media if it's a military-related movie.
Cool. Yeah, so those are all the places to check us out. News, I'll start with trailers. We had the new Deadpool trailer where you see the bad guy.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. I'm still a little iffy about this director, and so that's got me a little bit concerned. But yeah, it was good. I mean, it's kind of classically Deadpool, and some Easter eggs in there as well. There's some new characters that they're introducing. That including like Terry Crews is going to be in the movie. Bill Skarsgård apparently is going to be in the movie. So interesting, some interesting stuff that came out of that. There's a character named Shatterstar. Is that important, Josh?
Sure. When you get that deep into X-Men, then my mind starts to go blank. I mean, you say Domino. Okay, sure. Cable. All right, sure. Negasonic Teenage Warhead. Okay, I was introduced to her 2 years ago, but no, not Shatterstar.
He's apparently played by some Muay Thai professional fighter guy.
Oh, okay.
Now,
very interesting.
I don't know how many trailers there were. Was this one where he actually plays with action figures? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was amazing.
Yeah. I laughed my ass off. Anything that Ryan Reynolds does in that persona, I probably would be ready to anyways. But man, I had fun with it. And when he stops it, when they have the green sleeve of Josh Brolin there, I'm like, okay, all right, they've got the right tone for the trailer at least. I'm with you about whether the director will execute the film as a whole or not. David Leitch didn't make a complete Atomic Blonde film, but Deadpool 2, I think his direction is meted by the enthusiasm and charisma of Ryan Reynolds. I'm more worried about Josh Brolin than Ryan Reynolds or the director for that matter, just because he doesn't always hit the mark for me.
Very true. But he's been pretty good lately. His last movie, the Firefighters movie, Only the Brave, was pretty spectacular.
Yeah, and then there was I Feel Pretty, the Amy Schumer movie.
I laughed a lot. I did. Then I was watching, oh gosh, what was it? somebody was like, oh no, it was Nathan Rabin on Twitter was talking about this trailer, and he's talking about how basically the idea that Amy Schumer isn't fuckable is kind of just what's wrong with this country. Like, 'cause she totally is. Like, I find her very attractive, and this trailer trying to pretend that she's not attractive is kind of that's the hard part of trying to. But I keep coming back to it's her experience. This is how she's experienced the world her entire life. This is how she's always felt about herself, and certainly she's gotten that feedback, I think, from men, which is why she feels this way.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen her stand up where she goes, I have no problem finding a guy any night of the week if I wanted to. So I think she knows that guys like her. But I mean, every woman, whether they know it or not, I shouldn't say every woman I know personally that I'm speaking of always feels like they're not good enough. They always want to look better. And that goes for really anybody, to be honest with you. And this movie kind of captures that perfectly so far.
Captures it, turns it on its head. The whole thing that she does in her stand-up coming out on screen. It might be too long of a movie. Snatch last year wasn't very good, but there were some moments where she's being her, and that's great. And I'm 100% with you. I think Amy Schumer is incredibly attractive and always has been, always will be. And sometimes, in fact, when she says that she's at her sleaziest, I'm thinking, really? That's just fine. You could wake up next to... Yeah. Okay. But the movie itself, if it's not too long and it's trimmed in such a way that fits her comedy styles, I think it'll be very solid, just like her comedy when it's trimmed.
Yeah, and I don't know much about the director. I know it's Busy Phillips' husband. That's about it. But, Judd Apatow has a hard time cutting movies, and Trainwreck it worked for me, but it was overlong. Snatch is what it was, funny enough. But, yeah, we'll see. I'm always on board for Amy Schumer. Any news?
I was thinking, speaking of trailers, we didn't talk about Venom, and there was a teaser release for Venom this week, and I know it was brief. Perhaps you guys saw it or didn't.
I did.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm a little baffled, to be honest. I don't know how you have a Venom trailer, which the movie itself is already going off of the idea that we're not going to see Spider-Man in the movie.
Right.
Venom's like, he comes from Spider-Man, for crying out loud. Okay, and so you don't see Spider-Man in the movie, and you also don't see Venom in the trailer. So what you might see the symbiote, okay, you might see multiple symbiotes, and someone brought forth to me this idea that the idea of cloning symbiotes from the comics might come into this movie because we saw multiple containers and all that crap. I don't care. Where's Venom? Like, that's all I wanted to see was just a single moment of what are they doing with the special effects in this movie.
We are the most spoiled culture in the world. We really are.
Do I sound spoiled by saying that? Because all I wanted to do is see the character.
You've got several months before this movie comes out. You're going to see the character.
Okay.
Venom's not in the movie.
He's the last shot. That's what
it's like Luke Skywalker in Force Awakens. Tom Hardy goes walking up a mountain.
Nothing is that torturous.
No, I mean, you've got plenty of time. This is a decent tease. You want to give away everything in the first teaser 7 months before the movie comes out?
No, but what I did want to see was an idea of what they're doing with special effects to differentiate it from the 2007 film, whichever year that it came out, 2007. And I wanted to see what version of Venom they're going with. Is it like the beastly hulking Venom? Is it the slender, almost like a black suit Spider-Man Venom? And I think you can do that in just one shot. I wasn't asking to see him in action per se, but just what do they want Venom to look like? That's interesting to me. Even 7 months out, I'm still cool with it.
But I mean, it's better to me, I think, just to kind of establish this guy and this character before you even put him with that.
Okay, so you want to see Eddie Brock? You don't necessarily want to see.
I want to know who this character is and why he's going to be, what he's going to be like as Venom. What leads this guy to be Venom? I thought this teaser at least gave us a sense of the character first and his situation before and we'll get to see Venom a lot.
Okay,
leading up to the movie.
Sony's Eddie Brock comes out in October.
I mean, it stars Tom Hardy, who's
you're not going to not see Venom. It's going to happen.
Like I would
just a little bit of patience.
I don't have patience. I live in this culture, damn it.
There was a whole. You're not the only one who said it, because there was this whole blow up on Twitter. Like, people were going crazy. Why isn't Venom in the Venom trailer? It's like,
Well,
you'll get to see him. Relax, guys.
my troll comes out on the show here. I don't go to the message boards or Twitter.
I mean, it's Tom Hardy, and he, for the most part, is a pretty solid. You know, you can really trust him when he makes it. Even, like, as much as we weren't a fan of Dunkirk, it's not like he was bad in it, you know?
Right, of course.
Even in the bad movies that he's in, he's usually pretty awesome in them. And the great movies he's in, he's fantastic. Any other news or trailers before we get on to our movies? All right, I have no idea where to go in order, so I obviously got to start with 50 Shades, but other than that, we'll figure it out from there.
50 Shades Freed, the third film in the 50 Shades franchise, begins with the wedding of Christian Grey and Anna Steele, and that's kind of weird, isn't it? When you figured that'd be where the story would end as opposed to begin. Nevertheless, it begins with the wedding. And then from there, it turns into kind of this, I guess it's going to be a thriller. You can't take this movie apart, because if you start taking it apart, well, I'm going to have to probably, but this, you just pull one thread and the whole piece of shit thriller plot falls to pieces, because it's based off of this character who's in the last movie. I'm not sure if he was in the first movie or not, but he basically, the whole idea is that he's trying to get back at Christian Grey for reasons, but if you take this guy, it's a lifelong thing that he's had with Christian Grey, going back to very early on in their life. So apparently this guy became an editor at 3 different massive publishing houses, New York and Chicago and Seattle, all so he could build himself up to get to Seattle so that he could then try and rape the girlfriend of Christian Grey that he didn't know Christian Grey had in the last movie, and then try and murder them both in this movie. That's the plot we're going with here. That's what we're going to take away as the main plot of this piece of shit movie. This guy threw away 35 years of his life climbing the ladder to become a lead publisher at 3 different publishing houses just so he could destroy Christian Grey.
That's the long game, man.
Clearly, he's never seen Old Boy. If you're going to devote that much time, at least
Old Boy it up, yeah.
Yeah. You don't really have to do anything.
Dumb. So that's essentially what's trying to... He's the character who's propelling the plot, though he's barely in the movie. And so...
He's busy.
So you've got just all this, like, architecture porn for the most part. It's just like massive rich people houses, massive rich people retreats, massive rich people offices. And then of course, yes, there's fucking, and we'll get to... And the fucking is fine. Dakota Johnson is really, really attractive, and... very enjoyable.
It's the title of the podcast, if we could.
If we could put the F word in the title.
I will give the movie credit. Like, James Foley is a very professional director, and he's filming all of this to the best of his ability. He's got nothing to work with. There's nothing here in terms of the script, the characters. There's nothing for him to work with except for Dakota Johnson's a pretty good actress, and she looks great. That's pretty much all he's got, and he does what he can with it. And I got to say, I was impressed by the sex-positive attitude of the movie. I mean, she's a woman who's allowed to be sexual and not be punished for it, so to speak. Obviously, there's a little punishment involved. Different kind of... She's not judged for liking sex, where so many women in movies are judged for enjoying sex. They're not allowed to enjoy sex. She's allowed to, this is a character who's very sex positive. And I think that's at least one good thing that you can take away from the 50 Shades movies is here's a woman who's very sexual and allowed to enjoy it and is never treated like a whore for it. And I think that's, at least, if there's one minor thing that you could take away from this piece of shit franchise, it's that. And it deserves a little bit of credit in that way. Beyond that, it's a bad movie. It's a poorly made movie. It's a poorly written movie. Jamie Dornan is a fucking doornail. He's just has zero charisma. Makes Henry Cavill look exciting.
All right. So there's one below. There's literally a ground level. Yes.
So there you go. That's 50 Shades.
Twilight fan fiction. Is it done?
It's over, yes.
Yes.
Although I'm sure E.L. James will find a way to squeeze more money out of this somehow.
If she needs any more. I guess Peter Rabbit.
All right, Peter Rabbit. Yeah, I was also not a fan of this movie. That it's not nearly as bad. Peter Rabbit is kind of based on the Beatrix Potter novels. Obviously, this is a modern updating, so you've got modern pop songs and a lot of really modern references, modern ways of speaking. So it's not necessarily anything really related to Beatrix Potter other than she invented the character. James Corden is Peter Rabbit. Margot Robbie, Daisy Ridley make up some of the other voices in the movie. There's a couple human characters, the McGregors who live next door, Sam Neill and Domhnall Gleeson. And Rose Byrne is the nice lady who takes care of the bunnies. And the bunnies keep trying to get into the McGregors' garden to steal stuff, and the McGregors keep trying to stop them in ever more violent ways. And really, this movie is violent in a way that is kind of disturbing, really. Like, there's a lot of really violent moments in this movie that really kind of, beyond cartoonish, like, they took, like, actual jokes, and, like, just the punchline is just somebody gets badly hurt. I don't understand that approach. Like, you have jokes. You could do a joke and have a punchline, but every punchline here is somebody just, they touch something that's electrified and they fly backwards 6 feet into something hard. And that's supposed to be funny. So they replaced all the jokes. At one point, Domhnall Gleeson is throwing live grenades at rabbits. Or lit dynamite at rabbits, just throwing lit dynamite at them. And two of the rabbits act out a scenario like out of Full Metal Jacket, because one of them got a tomato on them, and they think it's blood. And so they're acting out this death scene. And I'm like, is this funny? Do children find this funny? I don't find this funny. Nothing in this movie made me laugh, not one thing. I didn't hate it. I didn't hate the characters, but I didn't laugh. I didn't smile. It just sort of all just happened. And the violence really kind of just like, why don't you just do a joke?
Yeah, I saw your post on it, and immediately, because I thought of the old Looney Tune cartoons, which are way more violent than I remember. And they're not.
But those are far more witty than this violence.
That doesn't matter. I mean, they're still throwing grenade. I mean, it's the equivalent of throwing live dynamite. I mean, they do stuff like that. They did stuff like that.
But there was a wit to what they did, and they still told jokes.
Well, no,
this replaces all the punchlines with violence.
Well, yeah, and that's fine. I'm saying, yes, the overall package is better back then, but
not to mention this
they
is
still had the
live
violence.
action with animation. That was just animation, which is an entirely different context.
But violence is violence. I mean,
cartoon violence is different from people on.
But they were doing it
people violence.
It sounds like, and I mean, just because the jokes weren't.
But it wasn't witty though. I mean, it's just there's nothing funny about a guy just throwing dynamite at rabbits. It's not. The context isn't even funny. You got to do it with some wit as opposed to just doing it. And anytime Daffy Duck got shot in the face and his bill spun around, it was witty. They had a context for it. They had a setup for it. It was unrealistically stupid. It was wonderful. This doesn't work.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying it works or doesn't work. I'm just saying I don't have. It's weird. I was just more or less commenting on the violence part of it. Is that it's if not worse back then? Because I mean, there was one I was showing my kids when they were like 2, and like a fish pops up out of water, grabs a gun, shoots itself in the head, and then falls over dead. And I was like, "What the hell is this? This is even before my time." Just like, yeah, but yeah.
Well, I was going to look up who the director was for this, so I could get some context.
It's Will Gluck, the director of Easy A.
Oh, okay. I've definitely heard that name before, but the IMDb page just has an advertisement that you can't get out of. Of course,
he also directed Annie, and he needs to stay away from adaptations.
The remake
yes.
of Annie, which I thought was okay. I was alone. But I'm thinking about this story, and none of what you said is what I remember from the Beatrix Potter novel. And so I'm thinking of this, not innocent per se, but childish story written by Beatrix Potter. The multiple stories, if I'm not mistaken. And English voices from Great Britain. Daisy Ridley, Margot Robbie, James Corden, Domhnall Gleeson, all involved. Couldn't you make something like Paddington with this. I'm not saying Paddington 2 because we know how you felt about that, but the first Paddington, where it's kind of like gentle and pleasant at least it tells the story of something that's set in like a countryside, and you've got animals annoying a farmer, but you don't have to have that extra hyperactivity to it. Because when we're talking about the violence here, I'm seeing more of needing to appeal to younger audiences, and then I'm remembering what my child watches and what children watch, which is in order to get a laugh out of them, you have to have somebody hit over the head with a hammer, because the normal jokes don't play the same way to this particular audience. I'm with you. I'd rather have the joke be told and then a random act of violence occurs. But
see, those jokes still do hit with those audiences. They really do. It's just that we don't give them those jokes anymore.
Well, I do.
We don't give them those punchlines anymore. We give them this, which is just the violence without the humor. And this movie is actually a pretty good comment on what we're giving children these days.
What about Home Alone? I mean, it seemed like this is very similar to that.
And that was 27 years ago.
I mean, that wasn't really the humor in that was the violence.
Yeah.
I mean, is it kind of a similar scenario?
I guess, yeah.
I mean,
That's a really good comp. Now that you say that, I'm trying to think of other things too, like Dennis the Menace, the adaptation that came out with Walter Matthau. There's like a couple of really violent moments in that when Dennis is encountering Christopher Lloyd's like hobo that really tries to hurt the kid, and I'm like, this is really dark. And that was 1993, 94 or something like that. So yeah, okay, maybe over the years, if we compare everything together, we've slowly degraded as a society over the last 40, 50 years.
I'm just saying we've been degraded the whole time.
Yeah,
But what I'm getting
But I'm saying there still were jokes in Home Alone. There still were a few jokes in there, as opposed to this, which has no jokes, just violent punchlines.
Okay. I don't remember Home Alone that well. Man. Let's do top 5 rabbits while we're at it. Go ahead, Josh. You got the Instagram, don't you?
I do. Good Steve has 5, Frankie the Rabbit from Donnie Darko. 4, Bugs Bunny, not from nothing in particular. 3, Killer Rabbit from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. 2, the Easter Bunny from Rise of the Guardians, an animated film, I think. I haven't seen that one. And number 1 is Roger Rabbit from Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
We have a lot of repeating rabbits on these lists. Jason from New Mexico had Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Harvey, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Space Jam, and any Alice in Wonderland movie. Christina Cato had Fatal Attraction, Holy Grail, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Donnie Darko. Beth had Space Jam, Donnie Darko, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Alice in Wonderland 1985, and Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Well done on specifying there.
Ranked by rabbit, she had Roger, Frank, Large Wooden Rabbit, Thumper, Bugs Bunny.
The one from Alice in Wonderland 85, we have talked about that, and she's got the same rabbit that I think it's the Jabberwocky from that. It's like a TV movie, and it haunted my dreams when I was a youngster. I know which Alice in Wonderland she's referring to.
Robert Adam of Grayskull Timberlake has 5 North, 4 8 Mile, 3 Akira, 2 Monty Python and the Holy Grail, 1 Donnie Darko. Cousin Jeff has Harvey, Laura Dern from Inland Empire, 3 Roger Rabbit, 2 Frank from Donnie Darko, and number 1 the Giant Rabbits from Night of the Lepus,
which would have been a great classic this week, actually. I should have thought of that.
Uncle Jeff, he had the Christmas Bunny, Donnie Darko, The Twilight Zone, the movie, Zootopia, and Looney Bugs Bunny movie.
That is a terrific still picture he's got here from the Twilight Zone movie.
Yes, it is. I had Bugs Bunny from Space Jam, Roger Rabbit, Frank the Rabbit from Donnie Darko, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and then Thumper from Bambi. Yeah, that's my favorite rabbit. Get over it.
He's pretty awesome. I'm with you. I'll go with mine. 5 Roger Rabbit, 4 Bugs Bunny from Looney Tunes Back in Action. I couldn't think of another because I hate Space Jam. But 3, Killer Rabbit from Monty Python and Holy Grail. I demand coherence. 2 is Harvey from Harvey, and 1 Frank from Donnie Darko.
I had Thumper from Bambi, the Boiled Bunny from Fatal Attraction, Frank from Donnie Darko, Bugs Bunny from several of his cinematic features from back in the day, and number 1 Harvey.
From those unviolent features back in the day.
No, they were violent, but they were funny. They had jokes, too, to go with the violence.
I'm poking the bear. Or poking the bunny, so to speak.
I guess we'll go here. We're going to get to the classic later, but 1517 to Paris, is that what it's called? Or 1715 or
1715 to Paris. The story of the guys who took down the terrorists aboard a French train in 2015.
Sure we should go to Paris? Or should we stay in Amsterdam? Or should we stay in Germany? Or do we really got to go to Paris? I don't know, man. We shouldn't go to Paris. Are you sure we should go to Paris?
We already bought the tickets. Maybe we should stay on schedule.
Everybody's saying Paris sucks. We should not go there. I just feel like God's calling me there, man.
Oh, no.
If Clint Eastwood directed a Pure Flix movie, this
like
would be it.
One of the worst Pure Flix movies.
Like, God is dead level bad.
You have real people who are the real heroes, which now you're set up to not be able to criticize this movie. And I apologize for not even letting Sean talk about it, because I was mad at Phantom Thread because I hated the characters, but at least it was good. I just hated everything about this. They set up so you can't get criticized a movie because you're criticizing heroes. But on top of that, you have these 3 guys who are just regular. They're heroes, but they aren't good actors. And then you surround them with TV stars, including Steve Urkel.
Comedians. You surround them with comedians.
And comedians, but largely from that work on TV. And they're usually good and stuff, but it's more like, I'm going to go work with Clint Eastwood. So I'll say this God line. And oh, my God.
Oh, poor Judy Greer has a line in this movie. She's told that her son, she's playing the mother of one of the heroes, and as a child, and this is going back to when he was a child, and she was told that he has ADD. And she's very upset about this, and the teacher is recommending that her son go on some drugs related to ADD, and she goes, "My God is stronger than your drugs."
Seriously?
That's what she says.
And when you look in Jenna Fisher or Judy Greer's eyes, like, you can see them trusting Clint Eastwood as they're saying these things, and they shouldn't have.
Now, when did there's a point of this movie where apparently a Catholic school can decide that a mother is not fit to be the parent of her child? This happens in this movie where the school says, "We've called a lawyer to take your son away and give him to your father, to give him to his father." It's like, what? That's how incoherent this movie is. It makes no sense. I hate this movie so much. I love these guys. These guys are incredible. But they did something that took about 7 minutes total. That's not cinematic. So you've got to build a story here to tell. So they go back to when they're kids, and the kids are bad. I hate criticizing kids in movies, but these kids are bad. Like, they cannot act at all. And perhaps they weren't even being directed. It didn't seem like it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's all just so amateurish. And the references to God are just pounded into your head like a bad Pure Flix movie.
Like, him talking to a chair is far more entertaining than I mean, it got to the point where you started to kind of not like the heroes. And that's not what... And then you start to feel bad for, like... Or you get mad because you don't like them. And you can't say you don't like them, but they're just... Had they made this movie, I would get it. You know, I wouldn't judge them as much. I'd understand it. But this is Clint Eastwood, like one of the best directors out there. It's like, maybe it's time to retire.
Yeah, you've got something there. I think if we were talking about a movie that was done skillfully and didn't pound something into your head, then we would say, if you imagine they built a story around 7 minutes of what actually happened, they made this amazing movie out of it, but the fact that they're trying to inject things into there, then what do you go for? You have to find an angle somewhere, right? So you've got to go with a faith angle. because what else are you going to fill the film with? I mean, the idea of destiny, no, that goes against what they're saying too. I mean, just only that God's calling them to something. So if that's your entire movie, it sounds like a poor idea to start out with. And even somebody that's really skilled, because he's clearly skilled, we've seen it many, many times before, he's not going to make a good movie out of just that. I would have rather seen something like this as a documentary, because that sounds like something you can have all sorts of different people that are in real life not having to be dramatic for it.
And you could take that 7 minutes and have them reenact it. You could do a reenactment of those minutes, however long it was. 7 minutes I'm just throwing out there, but that's basically how long it took, this whole incident. Otherwise, they'd have much more to work with in this movie. So you could just do a reenactment with them, and then they're good. Then do a documentary about the rest of it and make it about 80 minutes. Great, done. You've got a documentary that can go, right to on demand. Perfect. This is not a feature film. This plays like a first draft screenplay that Eastwood says, "Now we're done. We can just start." Like, I really should I do some revisions on that, Clint? We could beef up these characters a little bit. Maybe give them more. Maybe hire real actors. No. First draft. We're done. We're good. We'll start.
Yeah, Yeah, and even the 7 minutes, which we're just using that, isn't the trailer. I mean, it really is. You've seen it in the trailer. And then afterwards, I'm going to the bathroom, and there's other guys who were in the theater, too. One guy's like, "He's sure lucky that gun didn't go off, or we didn't even have a movie."
Right? Yeah.
Because that's the only reason. I mean, it's heroic whether he lives or dies, but that was the only thing that stopped this from turning really bad, was that the gun didn't work. Spoiler alert. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Like, I'm borderline one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I mean, it's that bad.
It is that bad. It is.
And that, if I had been on my own and whatnot, I would say, like, oh, that's the surefire bet right there this weekend would be the Clint Eastwood movie. Whoops.
Yeah,
it's shockingly worse than 50 Shades.
Ooh, brutal. In United 93, they used some of the real people that were in the air traffic control center.
Yeah, Ben Sliney specifically, who is the actual head of all Eastern Seaboard Air for the United States at that time. The thing about that is that he was well directed. Greengrass really cared about getting the best out of him, but also he had a lot more to do. He was constantly busy. Like, we didn't have to go into his backstory. We didn't have to go back to Ben Sliney as a kid and have him coming up through the ranks. This wasn't his story, so there wasn't a lot of time spent with him. But when the time we spent with him, he had so much to do that it wasn't really acting, really.
The thought was that if you integrate them properly into your film that already exists as a film, then that adds more resonance as opposed to it being the opposite end of the spectrum.
There's a line in this movie where the main character says to his friend, "That selfie stick's really on point." There's a good portion of the movie of them walking around Europe with a selfie stick taking selfies.
Or is it something about in the opening? They open up with a narration from one of them. And it's just like, "These guys always getting me into trouble."
Yeah. It doesn't take away from anything they did, but I don't know. It was one of probably the worst theatrical experience I've ever had. And strictly because the movie sucked, not because of any technical difficulties, nothing other than the fact that this is just that bad of a movie. I mean, it's like as bad as Knock Knock, the Eli Roth, Keanu Reeves movie, maybe even worse. At least that's fun. This is, I mean, I can't think of a movie I like less than this.
Most unimpressive.
And maybe it's because Clint Eastwood is the director that makes it that much worse.
It really does, because I mean, I don't understand how he puts his name on this. I don't understand how this gets released being this bad with his imprimatur on it.
Like I said, if they went and made this themselves, I can see, in their head, maybe they really were having that internal discussion of they didn't want to go to France, and I could see them making this movie on their own as amateurs.
Right. There's an entire scene. I swear it lasts at least 2 minutes. They meet a girl on a boat, and then they go and get gelato in Italy. And like that's the scene. They go and get gelato. And we sit there and watch as they pick out their gelato, and they all three of them want different flavors.
I mean, it's kind of like The Room where they go and like 5 people make full orders, but it's Clint Eastwood.
Uh-oh.
You know, I mean, when Tommy Wiseau does it, there's an honesty to it that's. Did I turn myself off, or can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
There's an honesty to it that works, but this it just it's bad. And then we watched a couple on-demand movies. Let's start with The Ballad of Lefty Brown.
Yes, The Ballad of Lefty Brown, directed by Jared Mosh. This is a story about a guy who's usually a side character in movies like this from back in the 40s and 50s, even earlier than that, the John Wayne era kind of guys. There would be this character, there would be this Lefty Brown character, and he'd usually be a guy who ends up like sacrificing his life to save the hero. And that would be his scene. But this is all about him. The hero gets killed early, and then Lefty decides he's going to go out into the wild and try and catch the guy who did it. And there's a much more complicated, kind of predictable story beyond that. But what really stands out about this movie is Bill Pullman. He's doing this kind of like old timey prospector kind of character. He's got a limp and he's got that voice and early on I thought, oh man, I was a little bit worried like this is not going to wear well, but he made it charming. He really did. After the first couple of scenes, I got used to the way he talked and the way that Lefty acted, and he begins to round the character into something so great, just so relatable and so different, so kind of refreshing in a Western, because again, this is not the guy who survives to the end in most other Westerns. He is not the lead character in your average Western. He's not dashing. He's not handsome. Like Peter Fonda looks fucking great. Like he's like handsome. He's a senator. He's a hero, clearly. And Lefty is not. He's grizzled. He's beaten down. He's kind of chubby. And all of his friends, he's got a really good friend, Tommy Flanagan, and the movie plays Tom Hara. And he's afraid that when Lefty goes off to try and find the bad guys, he's just going to wander off into the desert and die, because he has absolutely no confidence in Lefty being able to pull this off. And I loved the way their dynamic played out. I really liked this movie a lot. I thought this was a really smartly made movie. I thought the story really played out great. But Bill Pullman is really, really awesome in this movie.
Yeah, I don't really know what else to say. That's kind of the perfect description of this movie. At the beginning, I was like, my wife's not watching, just listening, going, "What the fuck are you watching?" And then but there are real people that are oddballs in real life. I mean, so it's not like he's not a real person. I definitely bought everything that happened in this movie. It is a little predictable, but that doesn't really matter in this movie.
I think what I've always said about movies where they have a plot that's familiar, it doesn't really matter, because we're going to talk about another one that has a kind of a familiar plot. If the characters are this good, it doesn't matter if I know where the story is going. I'm fascinated by the characters, and Bill Pullman's character is so great that I don't really care about the rest of it.
Yeah, I just want to buy what's happening as I get there, and I do. Everything that they did was, I mean, I really think Josh will like it a lot. It's hard to compare to anything else, because you're right. The main character is, you've never really seen a Western like this.
Oh, it's a Western, and it's something I didn't know until now when I'm looking up the information on it. And it looks like the director has done one thing before. And
a movie called Dead Man's Burden, which I haven't seen, but it's also a Western.
That's great. And would you consider this to be, in the past couple of years, we've got Hell or High Water. Sicario is kind of like a modern Western, if you will, in terms of how it plays out. Bone Tomahawk, okay. Lesser known, but still very effective. For me and you, at least. I don't remember you saying
I didn't actually get to see Bone Tomahawk. Okay. So,
is there a revival of the Western? I hate to say that because it's a very generalized statement to make, but I ask that because I would love to see that.
I don't think so. I mean, I think the Western just kind of pops up here and there now. It's never going to be back as like a full-fledged genre like the way horror is or anything like that. That's certainly not what it was back in the 50s when there were a lot of Westerns.
Of course.
It's never going to be that again. I just don't think people relate to those stories very well. But yeah, you got this and Hostels. I mean, it's certainly it's still relevant. I would call it more of a subgenre than it is a genre.
You're not going to see
is its own genre anymore.
I can't imagine another Tombstone or even Unforgiven, a huge successful Western like on that level. But you'll like it for sure. I know you. But you can't, like, if you want to say what type of Western, you can't even categorize this one. It's its own thing, which is what makes it that much more appealing to me.
For sure.
It reminded me a little bit, not necessarily in story-wise, but just how great the characters were. It reminded me of Open Range with Kevin Costner and Robert Duvall.
Really, really
I've not
great
seen that one, but yeah, it's good pacing. It's A24. They sent us a link to it, which was thank you for doing that. That's not a complete first, but it's always nice when A24 reaches out to us.
Oh, absolutely.
We're big fans of them, and I'm just we're finally having movies we're not liking from them, which and this definitely wasn't one of those. I was worried for about 2 minutes, and it's largely because of my wife. But Bill Pullman, such a recognizable guy, does disappear into this character.
He does.
And that's
absolutely.
He's one of the guys that's really hard to disappear into roles, and he's never really done it before, but he does do it here.
And I talked a lot about the voice, but it's so much more than that. The way that they lay in these little details about Lefty's character, the way that they talk about how all of his friends are written about in like Western history books, but not Lefty. I thought that was just some lovely bits of detail.
Yeah, just a great movie.
That sounds charming.
You're gonna love it. And then Bex.
Yes, Bex is a movie we talked about a few weeks ago. We saw the trailer. You brought the trailer in for a reason, right?
Yeah. The Ivy Envy podcast, they're friends with this other podcast called Sun Ranto or whatever, Danny Rocket. I guess this movie is about his sister.
Huh.
And the brother in the movie is based on him, which is the most appealing character in the world.
This is based on the life of a woman named Alyssa Robbins, who's a singer, and this is her story. Basically, Bex is her avatar. Bex is a character. She's she's so cool. Like, she's cool, but she's a fuck up, but she's cool. Like, she's a friend who will drive you nuts with her bad decisions and selfishness, but at the same time, she's still your friend. Right. And I really loved that. Even though I could see where this story was going, I still fell in love with this character so much that it didn't matter to me. Again, just like with Lefty Brown, like the characters are so good and the acting is so good that it didn't matter to me whether I knew whether the story was going. And whether or not the story is familiar of a genre, even, which this kind of is familiar of a romance genre. But Bex is she was going to move to Los Angeles with her girlfriend. She finds out the girlfriend is cheating on her. She has no money and no place to go, so she goes to her mom's house in St. Louis. Christine Lottie plays her mother, and they've got a complicated relationship. And we get that in just a single, like, minor exchange that tells us everything about their history, which I thought was really a clever piece of writing. But there's a lot of clever pieces of writing throughout this. So she goes and she starts performing at a friend's bar, and she meets another girl named Elise, played by Mina Savari, who has a complicated relationship with someone from Beck's past, which again, very well laid in. This is all very well written. These characters are terrifically relatable. And I just really, really liked this a lot. I enjoyed watching this movie a lot.
There's some really amazing scenes, too, throughout the movie spread in there. And then, I mean, even if it was a complete piece of crap, the ending is so good that it would have been good, and that ending would have made it good, but it's not. It's not a piece of crap. I really enjoyed the movie as well. It's just so watchable, and I guess the biggest criticism I have is that the real story took place in Chicago. This takes place in St. Louis, and they talk about the Cardinals like crazy in this movie. That is the number one the only bad thing about
any
this movie.
other city in America, and you choose the garbage dump of America.
The singer is from Chicago, but the director and writer are from St. Louis, so they moved it there and changed.
I mean, the most pleasant garbage dump of America.
Yeah. So, but I don't know, and we could maybe get somebody on the show if we wanted to talk to someone from the movie. I'm sure we could. Probably not Mina Savari, but maybe anybody else. But I don't know. I really.
In my review, and this is a genuine comparison, and I think this will put it in an interesting context for you, Josh. I compared it to Once because the music is that good, and I thought the romance was built up nearly that well.
Well, that's a thing to say right there. What are you guys making me do? I was like, finally, this week I'm going to catch up on stuff, and I've got things laid out. Black Panther's there for me on Thursday, and then you fuck it up with adding more shit to my pile. Thanks a lot. Actually, I'm on a movie show. I should probably do that.
Well, it was. I mean, I watched both of them back to back late at night, and then I was like so wired from two great movies in a row. I went and watched like Whitney Cummings was The Female Brain right after that. So I was pretty tired.
And that one brought you back down to earth, or
it was nowhere near. It wasn't as good as these, but it was an interesting movie. I think people would like it. It's. I like Whitney Cummings. She's fine. Anything else on Bex or The Ballad of Lefty Brown?
They're both available on demand now.
Yeah,
so we have no excuse not to watch them.
They're on Amazon, iTunes, wherever you watch your movies.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event for the linear, legitimate, and universally recognized, undisputed classic.
Clint Eastwood hears the most terrifying words ever spoken.
Play Misty for me.
The screen's most frightening plunge into terror.
You're not helping me, Buster Blue Eye.
Get off my back, Evelyn.
The next scream you hear may be your own. Clint Eastwood in Play Misty for Me, rated R.
All right. Our undisputed classic this week is Play Misty for Me.
1971, Clint Eastwood's very first directorial effort, and he plays a radio DJ. And it's not a very realistic radio DJ, but
No.
it's a radio DJ nevertheless. He's a late-night station in Carmel, California, which is where Eastwood is from and was mayor of back in the 80s. And the story goes that he gets a caller every night who calls in and asks him to play the song Misty for her. And he does. And she starts to fall for him over the radio, basically. He's not aware of it, but she's kind of fully immersed to the point where she's tracking whatever he says in the air so she can try and track him in real life, and ends up at the same bar as him. And he, not knowing her, takes her home and has a night with her. And she conflates this into something terrifying, not unlike Glenn Close in Fatal Attraction, which a lot of people have pointed out the similarities between this and Adrian Lyne's work. I don't know about this movie. I don't really know what to say about this movie. It's not bad. It's not great. It's another movie. It reminded me a little bit of Burnt Offerings, which is kind of there. Although Burnt Offerings is pretty bad, I guess, but it was bad in a much more interesting way than this, which is kind of just a level better, I guess. It's better made, better acted, but it's not much of a better movie.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it before, but it had been forever. And this one suffered from the I would never do it this way. And that's not fair to do to a movie because everybody would react to a situation differently. But for whatever reason, like this movie, and then there's like this Kurt Russell movie called Breakdown where I just sit there and I go, what kind of idiot would do that? But I'm sure somebody would, you know. There's a scene in this movie where Clint Eastwood has a girlfriend and he goes and tells her about the stalker and how she's back. And all he's concerned about is him. And he's letting her know that he'll be okay. Don't worry about it. And I'm thinking, you're not at all. She knows this girl exists. You're not at all worried about her. Just lets her go. And it's just like, well, you know, I don't know. Maybe I'm different. Maybe he's different. But that kind of took me out of the movie a little bit. But at the same time, when you take a step back and put it on like a Fatal Attraction, Basic Instinct level, I guess it's fun. It's
better than Fatal Attraction, at least for me.
It most definitely is. I can see little seedlings of Clint Eastwood's later efforts in this movie where a lot of his movies, in my opinion, are formed by the most simple of things. Whether it be something like lesser efforts like Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. I do like parts of that, and mainly because it's a very simple, easygoing type of movie. And you're like, this really shouldn't work, right? But it kind of does for me because it's simple. Blood Work. I like that movie, even though it's... I know. True Crime. I like that one too, and it's such a simple story. And this one's simple too. It's just don't mess with the wrong person, right? And yes, it relies on the same type of things that have come before it and definitely came after it, but there's something that sticks with me about when somebody is interested in you, then that makes you feel good. And so instead of thinking about the consequences of that, go ahead and continue with it, not concerning yourself about the consequences themselves. This Fatal Attraction before it, and then this afterwards, made me think to myself, boy, don't ever mess with the wrong woman, or because the kind of erratic, or in general, don't mess with the wrong person. The kind of erratic behavior that Jessica Walter portrays here, and the just obsessive behavior. Obviously, I think men would be far more at risk to do this than women. It bothers me on a level that is realistic. In the way that you talk about horror films, Bob, where it's better for you when everything is more realistic because that can actually really happen. There's not some random faceless monster coming after you. To me, this is like that because this is much more realistic than having your home invaded, et cetera, et cetera. It's the day-to-day interactions between people, and if you come across the wrong one, then you're going to have to deal with this. It has a lot to do with like my youth and people that bothered us in the neighborhood too and didn't leave us alone. It was like, when can we get away from this neighborhood? Because it's people always bugging you. So I'm bringing some personal stuff to this too. But to me, that's the real horror. And it's a simple film, but I always like that idea of her turning the light on, turning the light off, turning the light on, turning the light off. I'm like, why? Who does that? With somebody that's clearly out of their mind, and you can't control that. And that idea of something that you can't control just messes with me. So that's why I found this film to be more effective.
It is really like the kind of chaos that people are capable of, but don't generally enact. You know,
yes,
it's the idea that somebody could drive down the wrong side of the road. They just don't do it. And the idea that somebody would cross that line into that area where they're moving into your house without you wanting them there, you know.
Yes, and in relationships where if you aren't secure in yourself, then you're more likely to like let somebody that shows interest in you in. And then once they're in, I mean, it's over. Like in Fatal Attraction, that was a one-off thing, right? No, it's not. And this is the same thing.
And there's an interesting thing about the way that the male ego is definitely susceptible to this, especially when you're talking about characters like Michael Douglas and Clint Eastwood play in these movies. They're very egotistical characters who like to be flattered. And when somebody's willing to flatter them as much as these characters are willing to flatter them, they're going to go along with that a little bit more. Yeah. I buy into that, and I just I don't know. The movie set the wrong tone for me from the very beginning with that weird like comic font. Like it was kind of it's very common. Like I thought this was some sort of comedy all of a sudden with this weird looking title card, but then the tone never really gets anywhere normal. Like it was a little bit too much in terms of the thriller aspects, and I don't know. I didn't buy into it. I didn't buy into to his character especially, and something about him just didn't feel genuine.
Yeah, I just didn't buy into the realism. Like everything Josh is saying is true. I didn't buy into it as much as I do in other movies, but that's just, and I'll admit a lot of it's me just because I wouldn't act that way, and that's not fair because maybe this character would. I don't know. Maybe there's someone who's that. I mean, I buy into it for a while, but I mean, he had a long time to finally tell somebody, "Hey, I got a stalker, help me out," and he doesn't.
He had a long time to tell her, "We're done," and he kept dancing around it like a pussy.
Yeah, and I bought it for a long time, but after a while, I was like, "Okay, you're not going to get in any trouble if you tell someone you have a stalker. In fact, you might get some help." And it just kind of took me out of it a little bit, but I don't know. That's more me saying I wouldn't do that, so I don't like it.
I also didn't understand the cop character. Like the cop character in this movie, like comes at him immediately. Clearly, he wasn't there when the first attack occurred, and like And everybody's treating this like this woman, his cleaning lady, gets stabbed repeatedly, and is alive to tell
make
them
a hilarious joke.
she's alive to tell people what happened, and the cop is still coming at him like, this is your fault. You did this. Like, she's there. She can tell you who did this. She has told you who did this.
I'm putting a little bit of nostalgia into it, too.
Right.
Only in that when I was early teens or teenage years and parents are telling me things that I should see. I remember my mom saying, oh, in Clint Eastwood films, too, definitely watch all of his Westerns. And then also play Misty for me. You've got to see that one because at this point, it's like, I don't know if she'd seen Fatal Attraction, whatever the case may be. She thought that one was worthy of mentioning, maybe because in 1971 she's 18 years old at the time, and the thought of a young woman messing with a man like this or relationship stalker type stuff was more intense in 1971 than it is now, per se.
I could see this, like, if putting it into context of kind of today, like, I could see this being kind of a zeitgeisty movie that people were talking about, like, what would you do if this happened to you? The same way that, like, they did with Fatal Attraction or Disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what it sets up one of those questions of what would you do in this situation. And so I could see why this would become memorable and popular, but I just don't think it's that much like Fatal Attraction and Disclosure. I don't think it's very good.
Yeah, I don't think that we can put this on a level of a classic as we're breaking it down here in terms of a production made for under $1 million. The first production under Eastwood's Malpaso label, and it made almost $11 million. That's a very, very successful film, but in terms of box office numbers, they don't always speak to the popularity of a film, but I think in this case it does. If we're talking 20, 30 million, then we're talking about something that lasts for a long time in the public consciousness. People went to see it a second, a third time, etc., but that didn't happen.
The only reason I know about this movie is because it popped up on Fox all the time in the morning. And then literally never heard anybody, critic, person, until Josh mentioned on the podcast a few years ago. It came up at some point, I don't remember why. But that's the only time. Josh was the first human being I've ever heard say "Play Misty for me," aside from the commercial on Fox when I was a teenager.
Did you hear it in your sleep, Bob? I was right next to your bed.
I might now.
I think when it comes to this movie, and part of why it's not a classic is it's a lot like a number of different thrillers when you think about it. I mean, recently, like No Good Deed with Idris Elba, or When the Bow Breaks, or these movies that are now being made. Specifically with African American characters for some reason, where they've got the one crazy girl, the poor put upon husband, and the wife who's in danger. That's a genre now almost, and this movie is definitely like a early version of that. So it's really not that special. It's a genre.
Really,
movie.
none of them are that good.
No, not really. No,
I can't think of one that says like this is a great movie. I mean, if you're going to put Basic Instinct and Fatal Attraction there, it's only because of the people that've seen them and talk about them. They're not necessarily good enough to be on those levels, but
absolutely
they are popular enough.
I like Basic Instinct the most out of these three. If we were going to put them in like the femme fatale category,
I agree.
I would say Basic Instinct.
But at the same time, I'm not going to hold that up with a number of classic movies.
Sure, like
it's fun,
of course. It's a subgenre.
I prefer Jessica Walter.
Okay.
I don't know, man.
I don't remember her doing a lineup or answering questions in this movie.
Number 18 in 1988. Squeezed and pulled and hurt my neck in 1988.
Squeezed and pulled and hurt your neck in 1988.
1988.
Okay, so there are a number of films this week. I'll start with one that I didn't get to see, but I do want to see it, of course. It's Spike Lee's first directing effort that made it into theaters, called School Days, and this stars Giancarlo Esposito and Lawrence Fishburne. And we didn't know Lawrence Fishburne at this point. We didn't know Spike Lee at this point, and I haven't seen it. But then after this, you've got Do the Right Thing, Jungle Fever, all of the things that Spike Lee became very, very well known for. It all started with this. Have you seen School Days?
Yes, I have. It's a great movie. This is one of the best movies of 1988. It's so challenging and unique, and it's set at a historically black college that one that he made up for this one, but is based on the traditions from those colleges regarding especially fraternities. And it's interesting how relatable this is to modern times, because in the movie there's a lot of talk about South Africa and Mandela and boycotting products from South Africa and boycotting South Africa in particular. And you could really change that to a modern context today with Black Lives Matter. The way they talk about it then, they can talk about that now. And so it just kind of reflects just how relevant Spike Lee remains today, even because he's such a smart filmmaker, and he was always kind of talking about things that other people weren't talking about. And certainly, I love this movie. I think it's an incredible film, and just another demonstration of why Spike Lee is pretty amazing.
Speaking of films that made a lot based on a low budget, really low budget, sands south of $2 million, made almost $15 million at the box office. So at this point, Spike Lee is not only considered something of a maverick in filmmaking, but he's making money for people too. So it's kind of a big deal. Also, Shoot to Kill. It has another title that somebody pointed out to me on Facebook, but I can't remember what it was. It stars Sidney Poitier and Tom Berenger and Kirstie Alley. Directed by Roger Spottiswoode. He's a Bond director. Arnold movie, The Sixth Day. So he's an action director. So you've got an FBI agent and a tracker following a serial killer. For a weekend in February 1988, making $26 million is kind of a big deal, but I have not seen it.
No, I haven't seen it either, but I think I've kind of seen it, and that premise I've seen at least a million times.
Oh, yeah, of course. It sounds like most films on USA in the afternoon in the 90s. But also, one that I didn't see, but I remember this trailer so very well because I was in love with her from Family Ties, Satisfaction. And Justine Bateman is the lead in this. She's the lead singer of a rock band that plays at like a local bar. Liam Neeson is the bartender, and they may or may not have a dalliance. I don't know. All I remember is the trailers on TV, and they're playing literally the song Satisfaction from the Rolling Stones, and I'm like, well, I don't really like the song that she's playing because it just didn't sound right, but that's Mallory, so I'm on board. Either one of you seen Satisfaction?
It's been years. This is one of those that was on TV in the afternoon, like a number of other movies of its time. There's something I'm trying to remember about this movie that I just need. I'll never get it.
The fact that the band's name is Mystery?
Yep, that's what it is. No, it's the fact that Julia Roberts is in this movie.
Oh yeah. It's her first feature film.
Yes, that seems notable to me. That I realize you're focused on the Justine Bateman aspect.
Yeah,
but historically, Julia Roberts was in this movie.
Yeah, this was before I started watching like Growing Pains, and then Tracy Gold got involved, and then I had another woman that was older than me that I was kind of crazy about. But this did not launch Justine Bateman's movie career either. I mean, it made around $9 million, as I can see, but she did not become a well-known film actress. And for that matter, after Family Ties, I'm not really sure what Justine Bateman did.
I believe she left Hollywood on her own. To do something else.
Well, that makes sense.
Didn't she do a really funny Arrested Development cameo?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. I remember that now. And the one that I did get to because I was excited about it this week was Action Jackson, produced by Joel Silver, in the same vein of Die Hard and Lethal Weapon in terms of premise and the way that the film plays out, opening and end credits, music, the whole thing is there except for a charismatic lead. Carl Weathers has an amazing body. Like I would kill to have Carl Weathers' body, okay? And he shakes hands with the best of them. I really like Apollo Creed, I really do. But as Action Jackson, he has no charisma at all. I mean, he is the nicest, most savage cop of all time that we never see do anything savage on screen. You throw that in with Craig T. Nelson doing Taekwondo or Kung Fu or whatever, there's no way. And this is not Craig T. Nelson's fault, but I've seen Poltergeist. He's the dad that's got his belly hanging out. He's Coach. There's no way I'm going back to Action Jackson and believing him as a villain with martial arts skills. I'm sorry, there's just no way it's happening.
Does he wear a suit and ride in a limo? That seems to be the kind of that's kind of the marker of a really great 80s villain.
Oh yeah. I mean, the limo driver from Die Hard is in this movie. There are a couple of other Joel Silver regulars, like the torturer from Lethal Weapon. I can't remember that man's name, but I believe he might be in Die Hard as well. Yes. He's in this film as like the trainer for.
Is the therapist in this movie from Lethal Weapon?
Yes, she is at the very beginning.
She's in all his movies.
Yeah, I can't remember her name, but she has since passed.
Yeah,
and there's so many recognizable faces in Action Jackson. The soundtrack is fine. Like it's like they're trying to make Beverly Hills Cop, but like as Lethal Weapon and Die Hard. Even the Pointer Sisters have a song that leads off the film. Okay,
wow.
So it's like a copycat of something, but it doesn't work. Sharon Stone is in it as Craig T. Nelson's wife, but she isn't in it for a whole lot. Vanity is in it as well, looking absolutely gorgeous, and she's got a tremendous voice. But then they give her songs that are so corny, and they hold on the shots because it's like, you can be in this movie, Vanity, and we'll make the deal with you. Yeah, you can have that extra like 30 seconds of screen time. Okay, the whole thing doesn't work. And I just wish it was a little harder around the edges, to be honest.
I haven't seen it, but if Carl Weathers played it as Apollo Creed, would it have been? Because, I mean, that's like Captain Charisma right there. Would that have worked?
Absolutely.
At least on a stupid fun level.
I think the problem is you can't have a guy that's being built up before you even get to the scene where he shows up. Where like the guy is freaked out because he's been arrested as a purse snatcher. They say, "Oh, we're going to send you to Action Jackson. He's going to rip your limbs off." Blah blah. The last guy that we blah blah. And then he ends up at his desk. He faints, and then Carl Weathers gets up with a smile. Like, okay, I'm sorry, he's not a badass. Then he's just that very nice guy around the corner that's going to get your puppy out of the tree. I mean, wait, why would a puppy be in a tree? Okay, a cat out of a tree. You know what I'm saying.
What if we played him as Carl Weathers from Arrested Development?
That would also be fantastic. Honestly, no matter, because I like him. I like him a lot. He doesn't do anything for me, and then the movie fails him because it doesn't give him anything to do other than be really nice. He wants this woman in Vanity. They're going to be a couple. It's clear. But as long as she gets off the smack. Oh, okay, man, that's really sexy when you get me off drugs, Carl.
It is funny how, now that you look back, it's Carl Weathers, Sharon Stone are the two main names up there.
Yes.
Only because she got famous.
That is true, and she's a side character for sure.
If it was Carl Weathers with one hand from Happy Gilmore.
Any Carl Weathers that I've seen, including armless Carl Weathers dying in Predator.
Yeah, but Happy Gilmore, that'd be a fun movie too with this. Yeah.
I can see why Silver Pictures wanted to make this a franchise, and it made over $20 million, but not close to what they were expecting, I'm sure. But
why didn't Carl Weathers strike when this was actually hot back around 78? I mean, he'd waited 10 years before he's taking a front lead role. You'd think back in 78, coming off of Rocky, he would find another role.
He brought this to the table, as I understand, and he wanted to make something that honored blaxploitation films as well as mixed with the action films of the day. So I can understand like having it in Detroit and making it kind of like a hard setting and him being like the hard backhand guy that really treats people right, but there's no hard edge to him at all. It's like Shaft without the shaft. I don't know.
That was an unintentional double entendre right there.
No, it was intentional.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure that was intentional.
This time I actually made it funny.
We need to set you up at the drum set. We're moving the microphone over there. All right. Anything else from 88?
No, that's it. Slightly disappointing. I still enjoyed some of it, though.
Next week, obviously, the big one's Black Panther. And because of that, our top 5 will be the cast of Black Panther, minus the white guys. You can't put them in your top 5. Josh.
Do I get to make my joke next week? Okay. Well, it's not my joke. It was brought to me. Okay, so there's Martin Freeman and Andy Serkis are in the film. Martin Freeman played Bilbo Baggins. Andy Serkis played Gollum or Smeagol, depending on who you're looking for. So the only 2 white guys in the entire cast were from Lord of the Rings. So they're the Tolkien white guys.
It's funny if you didn't explain the joke before you told it. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, you're probably right. Well, it was
really
explained to me beforehand.
Well, the way you told it before the podcast was actually fun.
Man,
I apologize.
No, I need comedy police. This is good. Issue me a citation. I'll get better.
I'm just kidding.
Actually, the failure of the joke was far funnier than the joke.
That is true.
You're welcome. Free of charge.
And then I'd imagine Samson's coming, so because of that, we're going to see Samson and Delilah, what's his name? The Cecil B. DeMille movie.
Right. 1949.
Not too long. Probably feels long.
Just because it's Cecil B. DeMille.
Yeah. And then, I don't know if Early Man's coming or not, but it's hitting 2,400 screens. I don't even know what that is.
It's an Aardman animation movie, stop-motion animation.
They're usually pretty darn reliable, to be honest. I really like the Crudes. I like Flushed Away, even though nobody likes that. Chicken Run, Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah, so that may be coming as well, but that's what we're going to have on the show next week. Anything else before I thank our Patreon supporters? All right. In order to be a Patreon supporter, I hate critics.net/Patreon. I want to thank our best boy, Charlie Messing. Our key grip, I mean. Sorry, guys. Nothing wrong. Our character actors, Christina and Josh.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Our special effects advisor, Corey.
May the Force be with you.
Our executive producer, Jason from New Mexico.
Bullshit, artist. Am not. Bullshit.
And our movie stars, Uncle Jeff and Dave Severs.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Like I said, I hate critics.net/Patreon. There will be a bonus Patreon episode coming in at least 2 weeks, hopefully next week. We're going to try to knock out the Greasy Strangler for that and then make that available for purchase on Bandcamp or something like that. We'll figure it out. And then, as always, Apple Podcasts, subscribe, rate, review the show. We'll read your review on the air. And otherwise, stick around for after the credits where we play a brief game of Flickchart.
That ought to do it. Thanks very much, Ray.
And we're the three best friends that anybody could have. We're the three best friends that anyone could have. We're the three best friends that anyone can have. And we'll never, ever, 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 ever leave each other. We're the best three friends that anybody can have. I mean the three best friends that anybody can have. That's right, the three best friends.
Ooh, wow, right out of the gate. You guys able to play Flickchart?
Yeah.
The Dark Knight Rises. Return of the Jedi.
Let's Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi. I'm honestly interested in your opinion on this one.
I don't like either one of them. Probably Return of the Jedi.
You saw the special edition, though, so you're not really getting the true experience.
That may be, but there's just so many holes in The Dark Knight Rises. I mean, I guess in the fact that The Dark Knight Rises kind of started the podcast, that alone, I guess, gives it a little credit. But otherwise, Snakes on a Plane or The Devil Wears Prada.
Devil Wears Prada.
Snakes on a Plane.
Come on, man.
Am I making you make the bad choice?
No, I mean, I gotta go with Devil Wears Prada. I just don't like Snakes on a Plane. Largely because I was having I don't know, I won a bet against my brother and he still claims I didn't win. I said it was going to fail when it came out, and or not be the big hit they thought it was going to be. Like, he was thinking hundreds of millions of dollars. Nope, 10 or whatever it was.
More than that,
not much.
It did not do nearly as well as
it did not do what they were. It lost to Talladega Nights.
Yeah,
the week it came out, and that had been out for like 3 weeks at that point.
Like, you couldn't call it a bomb because it
wasn't a bomb
because the budget was very low.
Because it was a sci-fi movie.
But certainly the gross did not match the hype.
No, and that's what I mean.
34 million.
Same thing.
Right.
And I was talking opening weekend. I don't know if you're talking total gross
Total
or
gross.
Yeah, you were talking about opening weekend.
not. That said, I did finally see that Hurricane trailer.
Hurricane
Oh,
Heist?
man.
Oh, what a piece of crap that.
There's a level of fun that could be there, though. I don't know.
I don't know. That trailer's bad.
Oh, it's horrible. But it's...
By the way, they just at the movie theater here in Davenport, they put up a big standing display for Hurricane Heist, and if you walk past it, it plays "Rock You Like a Hurricane."
Oh no. Oh.
I mean, it may suffer from a little bit of the Sharknado thing that Sean talks about, where they were purposely trying to do something stupid with a bigger budget, maybe.
Yeah, that's scary.
But it could be fun. I don't know. It looks really bad, but maybe in a fun way. I don't know. We'll see. Well, Sean will see. And he'll tell you what sucks. The Mask of Zorro, Back to the Future Part 2.
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future.
I agree. Revenge for me. Goodfellas, Return of the Jedi.
Goodfellas.
Return of the Jedi.
Really that close?
I love Return of the Jedi, but it's
I understand,
Return of the Jedi is my least of the original trilogy.
Right. Goodfellas is like a classic. Return of the Jedi just exists.
Goodfellas is a classic.
No Country for Old Men or Beetlejuice.
No Country for Old Men.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I am excited to talk about that next month, though. Beetlejuice, when it turns 30. I haven't seen it in such a long time.
The Mummy, 1999, or Big Fish.
Oh.
That is... Man, that's rough for me. I really did enjoy The Mummy, whereas Big Fish irritated the fuck out of me. Even though I think it's better made, I'll go with The Mummy.
Big Fish.
Big Fish.
It's just too much whimsy. At a certain point, there's too much whimsy.
We could have just saved you and said Big Fish right away, and you didn't have to say
Right.
Well, we let you suffer a little bit. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets.
Crouching Tiger.
Crouching Tiger.
Yeah.
That's better than all the Harry Potter films.
Robin Hood, Men in Tights, Bambi.
I laugh a lot at Robin Hood Men in Tights, as embarrassing as it might be. Yeah, I'm going to go Robin Hood.
Yeah, speaking of whimsy, Bambi is like full of whimsy except for like one moment of
Right, but
non-whimsy.
it's a kids movie. Big Fish is not a kids movie.
It's for the kid in you. Robin Hood, Men in Tights.
Bambi. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. Thumpier's your number one bunny, so.
Well, it's kind of like Beck's, the ending. No matter how crappy the movie could have been, the ending saves the whole movie.
Okay, sure.
How do you remember the rest of the movie? Mission Impossible 2, The Big Lebowski.
Oh, The Big Lebowski.
Agreed.
Number one movie for me.
Beauty and the Beast 91, My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Beauty and the Beast.
My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Beauty and the Beast. The Fugitive 1993, or Alien 1979.
Oh.
I love how my movies never go up against each other, and I have
Right.
nothing to do with this.
Yeah, where's like your horror movies up against each
Well,
other? You know?
I guess I'm not as passionate about those. It'd be more like Rocky Almost Famous. That would be the one that...
Alien.
Alien, by a very small margin.
Alien. Remember the Titans, Fahrenheit 9/11. We're not doing documentaries? Or were we? I can't remember.
We can if
we
we've seen them, I
have.
suppose.
We've done Bowling for Columbine before,
Yeah,
so...
I guess. I'd pick Fahrenheit.
Agreed.
As would I. When Harry Met Sally, Justice League cartoon, we will not pick that. When Harry Met Sally or JFK?
When Harry Met Sally.
Boy, we've done both of these recently, haven't we? It's When Harry Met Sally.
I agree. Much as I like JFK. Despite Sean. Mean Girls 2004, Pocahontas.
Mean Girls.
I have not seen Mean Girls, to the chagrin of a lot of people.
I would go with Mean Girls as well. The Tina Fey movie.
I think you should watch it this week.
Right.
Me, Myself, and Irene, or Phone Booth?
Phone Booth.
Phone Booth.
Mm-hmm. 310 to Yuma, 07, Shrek.
310 to Yuma.
310 to Yuma.
Yep. History of Violence, Mission Impossible 2.
A History of Violence.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Otherwise known as the Looney Tunes Pictorial History. I kid.
Serenity, 2005. Dr. Dolittle, 1990.
Serenity.
Serenity.
Air Force One, LA Confidential.
LA Confidential.
SWAT, Sound of Music.
What was the first one?
SWAT from 2003. Sam Jackson.
You're going to make me pick The Sound of Music?
Yes.
All right, fine.
At some point, I mean, people like The Sound of Music. It's only fair.
Yes. God, it has to be.
SWAT is really bad.
Yeah, it really is.
Wrath of the Titans, 2012, or Back to the Future.
Wrath of the Titans? What's that?
That's the sequel to Clash of the Titans.
I'm pretty sure
Sam
we can...
Worthington or whatever his name is.
I see. I've seen that movie and I don't remember it because
Oh,
I saw it in 3D and it was so dark you couldn't even see the movie.
Me too.
Yeah.
Or the title.
What was the other one? Was against?
Back to the Future.
Oh, Back to the Future. Yeah, that's fine.
I don't think you have to have seen the two to make that decision. Hulk, 2003. Naked Gun, 2.5.
Naked Gun.
Naked Gun 2.5. It has one of the better improvised lines. Guy's up on stage, says he's reading from the romance book, and he's throbbing love sword into his quivering mound of love pudding. That's one of the best lines of all time. That should be my new clip.
All right, last one, Kick-Ass, 2010, or Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Roger Rabbit.
Roger Rabbit.
I'd probably go Kick-Ass, but mainly due to recency. All right, see you next week.